exactly. Yeah, I think that's, okay. Oh, we're live now. Okay, great. So we run 5 minutes live.
Got it.
Yeah. And that's your only phone, right? Okay, great. Got you. Yeah, so,
You want me to get this going now?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
yeah, why not?
See what happens.
Okay, I got to start sharing too. I don't want to
Loading.
forget to share. Hold on. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun, Dave. Thank you for being here,
thank you
buddy.
for having me. It's
Thank
gonna
you
be
for
awesome.
being
I
here.
don't know if it's casting. It just kind of went, and then it went back to the link to the selection screen.
Okay, so just hit the red button then, and that's when it should be casting. I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
If not, it'll record locally, and at least I'll have it for B-roll.
There it goes. Live plus record. Oh, you're supposed to be in Burnie Splice today, but 2 o'clock. Your calendar keeps popping.
Good, Dave.
Yeah, it says live plus record. So
Okay, well, we'll see, and then you can just see if it pops up on my page.
check it out.
All righty, let's get going here. You hear that?
It sounds like it's something behind the.
Does it? You know, I had trouble with this. Do I got a minute, Tony?
You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I don't want to do that right now. Did it sound like it was coming from you?
I thought I heard it coming from behind there, but my.
I'm not hearing anything. So.
No, I'm just worried because the switch, I turned it on, the switch came on, the light didn't come on. I lowered it down, then the light came up, and then I lifted it. So it could be a bad switch. Oh well, if we survive the show, then it'll be a good decision not to go back there.
I don't see anything on here. So.
Great.
I mean, none.
No, on the LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's not casting. Maybe they revoked my access.
Yeah, if you want to, you could cast to Facebook. You know, just on this is how we are right now. But that's because it's coming from that back camera.
Got it.
So we're just seeing the whole stage.
Ah, okay.
When we come from these three, then
Yeah.
we've got the background. All right, great. Look forward to this. This is going to be great.
It will be fun.
Oh, 2 minutes.
And I didn't have to go any further than my own neighborhood.
I know, right?
To get a guest today. I love it. I think you know Kevin Allen, who lived there. He's got the kid. The
Oh
two
yeah.
kids
He
that
lived
come
there
over.
behind us a couple times. ago.
Yeah. He was exactly. I had him on. We had his own. He had his own show.
Oh, really?
For a while.
Oh, that's cool.
Because he
What did
came
he
in
do?
right when I first started. He's PR.
Oh, okay.
He works for Razor.
Right.
Yeah, and right when he first came in, he was working for Kawasaki then.
Okay.
And he came in and he loved what I was doing, so he got one, and we did shows about startups and stuff. It was a lot of fun, you know. Between his work and his new job, I mean, we didn't
And
get
he
much
had
time.
kids as well coming up, didn't he? He had a couple of kids.
2 kids,
Yeah.
and they're having twins.
Gonna have twins. Gosh,
Twins,
my
dude,
goodness.
4
1 minute.
4 kids.
That's incredible.
Oh, way incredible,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, we feel bad because we're now on the 3rd set of folks in between us, and we just think, are they just moving out because of us?
No, you're not bothering anybody, Dave. Please, believe me.
Yeah, you're live.
Yeah,
Okay.
Say hi to your LinkedIn folks.
Hey,
Oh,
LinkedIn
great.
Live, thanks for
LinkedIn
joining us.
Live. LinkedIn Live.
We're on Burnie's Applebox. Thank you for joining us. If you've got a leadership question, just put it in the comments and we'll answer it for you. The only apology that I've got is you don't get the benefit of seeing what we're casting on the green screen behind us, but we'll muddle through.
Yeah. Use your imagination. This is like a blank book right here.
All right, stand by. 10 seconds to the open.
All right. That's great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Share the show. Friday at 2 o'clock, got to be Burnie's Applebox. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2020. And I cannot think of a better way to start 2020 than my good friend Dave McKeown.
Good to be here, Burnie. Thank you so
right.
much for having me.
How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. It's a Friday. It's a Friday afternoon. I'm with you. The sun is shining.
Yeah.
We're in Southern California.
Yeah.
What more can you want?
How much more could you want? How much more? Did I pronounce your last name?
You did
right?
pronounce it. McKeown or McKeown is the actual...
McKeown. McKeown.
McKeown
Okay.
works. McKeown
Okay.
works, yeah.
I practiced before the show, too. Dave, now you're in a leadership, and your leadership training,
Yep.
keynote speaking,
Yep.
and you've just wrote this great book, The Self-Evolved Leader.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've gone over it. I've taken a look. Haven't read the whole book,
okay.
but I've taken a look at pieces. I've got to tell you, in my industry, which is film and video, production, media, you know what I mean, production companies, people, we are small groups. And we are small groups that come together and break up and then reform in different constituencies.
Right.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One thing that I have always felt is that there was a underemphasis on leadership. You know, it's really easy to understand the hierarchy
Right.
of the set.
Right.
And that is very, I mean, that's really what sort of the whole leadership relies on. You've
Right.
got producer who hires the director, director oversees the whole project, director hires the director of photography,
Right.
he hires the other department heads, brings them on, and the project gets completed and the director sees it through. You know what I mean? So that is a very easy model to understand. But then you go down, and I think there's places where leadership has never been emphasized enough. I think, you know, it used to be in the old Hollywood days. That director of photography was God.
Right.
You know, nobody knew what was going to come onto that film, and it was his entire responsibility. And there was no monitors.
Right.
There was no nothing.
Yeah.
You were spending thousands and thousands of dollars in getting those scenes that day, and you didn't know until the next day
Right.
what it was going to look like.
They sort of had some Solomonic kind of power over everything.
They were the witch
Right.
doctors.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, you know, they knew how to throw the bones.
Yeah.
You know, so that guy was God. Now, things have changed, obviously. You know what I mean? It's gotten much more a democratized industry.
Sure.
But a lot of those same things are there. The point I'm getting at is essentially the director of photography is still considered the head of a department.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
As is the head of wardrobe,
Right.
head of makeup and hair. You know what I mean? They have their own little fiefdoms
Sure.
within that overall hierarchy structure. I think there has been a real dearth of understanding about what leadership is in those roles
Right.
in our industry.
Right.
You know what I mean? And when I read your book, when I looked at it, you know what I mean? It just hit home on so many levels of our industry
Got it.
of what we needed to hear.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And sometimes it's difficult in those settings where, you know, groups come together and they work together for a while, particularly if there's that freelancing nature behind
Yes.
them, and then they go their separate ways and they come back. Because it's not the traditional hierarchy, right? It's not like you go work for the man and you can see the flow down.
Yep.
You're probably also working with people that are your friends, buddies that you've been in business with for
Personal
a long...
relationships are the lifeblood
Right.
of this industry.
So you've got an additional challenge there, but the reality is that one of the concepts of leadership that I think is shifting, has shifted over the last 5-10 years, and will continue to shift is around the concept of authority vested in the role, right? Towards a concept that actually anybody in any position, if they're working with a group of people, have the ability to show and demonstrate leadership. And so it's happening a lot in industries like your own industry, but you look at a lot of startups, the way they're they're structuring their companies as well, they don't want the traditional hierarchy. They don't want authority through a role. They want more of a collaborative, open manner of working together where folks can lead not just themselves, but one another and groups of people and teams. So I think that we're making a shift between what we thought we knew about leadership to something else that we're not quite sure what that is yet.
Right. So it sounds like almost the new, more modern role is also what we're already practicing here is that disbursement of responsibility, that they make their decisions, they do their thing, they bring it in back for the common good, and then send it up the chain.
Absolutely. And for so long it was, the leader says, this is what we're going to do, and everybody goes, okay, we'll go do it, and then they go do it, and either you did it to the quality that the leader wanted or you don't, and repercussions follow. The reality is that in today's day and age, people are just not responding to that anymore. They want to have buy-in to not just the goals that we're setting for ourselves, but where we're going as a group and a team, who we are as a group and a team. Like, they want to be part of the actual fabric of setting the overarching direction and vision for the team themselves.
Right.
And your industry clearly has been doing a version of that for a number of years.
Yes.
It's not creeping into our organizations as companies are trying to essentially solve this problem of how do we lead in today's environment.
And it's a great thing to hear that, actually. You know what I mean? It's very nice. But it's funny because I've thought a lot about that model. How we come together. We come together as groups, and a head puts that together, the director, if you will, puts that together. And I've often wondered, and maybe you're saying this right now, how long it would take for business to actually adopt that model, but it sounds like it's happening right now.
It's happening. It's definitely very much, to use inverted commas, a startup mentality. So a lot of founders, whenever they start a business, they see, usually they'll have come from a big, overbearing, overarching corporation.
A big international corporation.
Right, and they see the problems with hierarchy, with bureaucracy, with just layers and layers of management and how that slows things down. And so they say, okay, we're not going to have any managers whatsoever, which we're just going to throw everybody in a room and kind of see what happens. And there's a balance between the two of them, right? You can't have complete, just chaos. You also can't have complete rigidity. Somewhere in the middle, this model will evolve where we get things done in an appropriate way, where people feel valued, where they're able to come to work and be their best selves, but that it's not this overbearing sense of structure or bureaucrucy or hierarchy.
And I think what I've noticed in bigger businesses and stuff, and I was 40, as I've said too many times on this show, when I entered this industry, you know what I mean? So I came from a very rigid business background.
What were you doing before?
Automobile imports.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, so we would have 10,000 cars on the lot. And I was in charge of yard operations.
Right.
So we would have to move these cars to different places to get different accessories. Everything was done by VIN number.
Right, yeah.
Which does not leave you a lot of playroom. You know what I mean? That car had to go on that rail car because it had this AC.
Right.
So it was very, very highly structured, which was a huge attraction to me the first time I set foot on a film set.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I realized oh, this is not the same math I came from. You know what I mean? This is about holding a shirt up and seeing if that's going to play on camera.
Right.
It's about, the feel of something and all of that. And this is one area I think that why we're weak in leadership. Nobody got into this to be a manager.
Right.
Pretty much everybody got into it for a version of their creativity.
Sure.
Now we have production managers who are very good, very efficient. They know how to run a set. But in a way, that's part of their art form too.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? They do that because they are actually very good creatives, bringing people together and getting them to work together.
And it happens a lot in creative industries. You can easily get stuck in this trap where, you are the creative, so you go sell whatever your creative product or service is, then you've got to deliver it. Then when you're delivering it, you're not selling. So then you realize, oh, I've got to go sell some more. So you sell some more, but when you're selling, you're not delivering, and then the cycle goes on and goes on and goes on.
Yes.
And so then what happens is you go, right, well, I need one other person to do one of these two things whenever I'm not able to do it, right? You start to get some traction, some momentum, and I'm sure you experienced this in your own career. And so people get a little bit of esteem behind them, But at heart, they're still a creative. And so making that decision of what do you want to be? Do you want to be let's call it a creative solopreneur, which is a smaller scale operation that, yeah, maybe you can put some outsourced systems and processes around to help you maximize your time? Or do you actually want to build a business?
Yeah.
The challenge happens quite often is when people get stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
They think, I want to build a business so that I don't have to be the one that's responsible for this all the time. But at heart, they want to be the one that's responsible for this all the time.
Right, yeah, right. No,
And so
no,
you're
it's
sort of stuck in
It's
this trap.
Yeah. No, that is very true. It's just like, and I was talking to you about this before the show too, is that I spent thousands of dollars to make a pretty picture on gear and equipment and want to get out there and practice my trade. I didn't want to become a businessman, but sure enough, as my popularity grew, as I wanted to get the return on that equipment that I bought, I have to become a businessman. And I was an entirely different person when it comes to the business side. Not a good one, by the way. You know what I mean? And that has been really sort of my journey in learning it too. You know what I mean? Is that there has to be that medium where you can still be creative. And it's evolution. You know what I mean? You're not the same person you started out when you started in this industry here, nor am I. You know what I mean? I'm that person who just needed to be creative, just wanted to be creative. And as you mature, as you get older, you have a broader view of it. You know what I mean?
And actually, funny enough, one of the concepts in the book that I talk about is that for a self-evolved leader, and to be honest, it applies to any area of life, one of the characteristics is that you push for growth. So you come across those challenges, you make that job shift, you see an industry change, and you say, you know what, instead of just relying on the way we used to do it or that used to work, you say, okay, the world is changing because the only constant here to stay is change, right?
Absolutely.
What do I do to take a step forward to learn that thing or do that thing? And I know that you talk about this quite a lot in your shows, is making that change and adapting to those changes in the marketplace, in the industry, in the technology. Because the reality is, you look at any business, it can go the same way that Blockbuster went, it can go the same way that BlackBerry went, it can go the same way that Kodak went. The reason that they all went under was because people had blinders on that said, we were successful before, we're going to continue to be successful that way. And then multi-billion-dollar companies just go like that overnight. I mean, do you remember BlackBerry used to be the coolest thing for the longest time?
Oh, I fought to not give up my BlackBerry, but I had to give up because it wasn't functional for me anymore.
And do you know the reason why they went under was because the executives refused to believe that people wouldn't want a physical QWERTY keyboard. That was it. That was
that one reason.
For that one reason, there are a couple of great biographies out there about RIM, and essentially that's what it boiled down to. They refused to believe that the industry was going to shift towards touchscreen, and within 2 years, Apple had them under.
Oh, as soon as that first Apple phone came out, they were done.
They were done.
They were done.
And so you apply that you take that down right down to the individual way, like, just the individual, to you and I. We're no different. We are just an individual business operating in a world, and if we don't choose to at least try to experiment with what's coming down, at some point you become redundant.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a sad place to be.
And we're seeing it too. And one thing I would like to say right now, I'd love any questions you guys have out there. Anything that is really specific, maybe you've lost some business, maybe anything that is affecting you now. Dave has got a pretty good handle on the type of things goes on. And I would just tell you, this week alone, I had 2 different people come to me and talk about what can I do because my business is down. They don't value my intellectual property anymore. You know what I mean? What can I do to that? And of course, my advice is you got to reinvent yourself. You essentially have to repackage yourself. You know what I mean? But please give us any questions that you've got here. That would be great. You were speaking and you mentioned one that our industry would understand very well, Kodak. Kodak. Now, let me just give you a quick briefing on how that affected our industry. Kodak, I think a lot of people don't know this, actually made the first digital camera, And they sourced it out because they were afraid it was going to compete with their film sales, which was, of course, the behemoth at that time, of marketability. Conversely, film cameras were all there, and then Red came out with the first really movie-worthy digital camera
Right.
that could produce new film. It just knocked, I mean, people like Panavision, I mean, their business has never been the same since.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In doing that. And conversely, there were a lot of guys who were raised on film, who were DPs, who were, it was the lifeblood. Their sole context of how to make a film was based on using film.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those guys didn't make the cut.
Right.
They did not make it over the line, you know. And those things, and we've seen this in the last 10 years, I'm saying, in our industry, you know. Speak to that, just like when a person is confronted with that level of change,
Right.
and it's really happening a lot now because all of, in my case, all of the new lighting instruments are different. They're all RGB. They can do all kinds of different things. It's almost like dealing with color is a big challenge in a lot of ways.
Right.
You know, what does a person? How do they manage that change? That stupendous change, let's call it, in their industry.
And I mean, it's tough, right? So if you look at it from a business perspective, one thing you've got to do is try to stay ahead of it. And I think one thing you're very good at is just being at that vanguard of what's coming next. But when you get to the point where things have moved on and it happens again and again and again, you know, we've seen it happening in the car industry, we've seen it happen in manufacturing, we're seeing it happen in coal industry, you know. The biggest thing, if you really get down to the individual of the person that you're talking about, it's about accepting the things that you can control and not worrying about the things that you can't control, right? So it's about saying, I can't control that this industry is changing. I just can't. I really can't. No, it doesn't matter who I vote for. It doesn't matter what I do. If the industry's changing, the industry will change.
Yes.
And so then it's about accepting what you can control. And that sometimes means going out and, you know, getting some retraining. It means going and finding another job, getting, you know, just essentially, like you say, reinventing yourself. The good news with all of that is, and I think we sometimes overemphasize the functional skills that people have, no matter what level they're at in an organization. When people get pegged to an industry, they begin to think, well, I couldn't do anything else. You know, I wouldn't be able to go in any other direction. And so what you've got to do is get good about learning how to learn, right? So if
Learning how to learn.
learning
I
how
like
to learn,
that.
right? So
I like that.
take the skill set that you have of learning how to do a thing. Everybody's good at doing one thing.
Right.
How did you get good at that? Well, you either watched somebody or you read a book. Or you watched a YouTube video, and then you practice, 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 and then you get good at it.
Yes.
And so just trying to switch that and make a move towards something else, I think, is hugely important. At the end of the day, nobody likes change, but the worst thing that you can do in a circumstance where change is coming is to play the victim and say, well, there's nothing I can do. There's always something you can do.
That is so true. Playing the victim, saying there's nothing I can do,
Right.
is one surefire way
Right.
to lose.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And your walls will just get narrower and narrower and narrow into
Yeah.
you, and then before you know it, you are trapped, and you're trapped
Yeah.
in your own mindset and your own belief system. And so it's about just continually to push yourself out there.
You know, going back to, here's one thing, and I remember when I started in this business at 40, and I always like to say most people probably thought I just got out of prison, you know. But was that thing, because I was fairly successful in what I did. I mean, I had a skill within that industry that I could, you know, there was some demand for it. I remember how many times I drove home when I was a PA or just started into the lighting. And this taught me more about how to manage my own self-worth,
Right.
you know, and that, but you don't know how many times I had that wrench in my stomach thinking, ooh, I screwed up. I hope I didn't ruin my chances. I felt like a fool.
Right.
I said the stupidest thing I think I could say. Any number of things that go along with that learning process. Now, I didn't manage it well back then.
Right.
I would manage it much better now, knowing myself how I know. But I would say, too, there is such an aversion to people as you get older, and maybe you've had some success in somewhere, of going back to sort of visiting those feelings.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it is about managing those feelings.
Oh,
You know what I
definitely.
mean? But you're going to feel not self-confident, I'll say. You know what I mean? You're going to have doubts in your own So how does a person manage something like that? Any thoughts on that?
I was going to say, just I think your concept is valid. That when we get successful in a particular area, and I don't necessarily mean money, or I just mean good at things.
You feel good about it.
Right, and you get a sense where you become metaphorically fat and happy, right? You're
Yeah.
like, I've got to this point, I'm good.
Exactly.
When the rug gets pulled underneath from us, we've grooved that synapse that says, oh, but I want to feel fat and happy again. I want to be able to take my foot off the pedal. I deserve this, right? I've worked hard enough
Deserve
for it.
this,
Right.
ooh.
Which in that instance, maybe you've worked to that point and you do deserve some of that success. But when you need to change, you don't deserve anything at that point, right? And you've got to go back and you've got to face those inner demons. And there's a degree of humility that has to come with that, and to say, you know what, I'm going to start at the beginning, and I'm going to look stupid no matter what it is. And I think that the more that you put yourself in situations where you're trying out something new, the better. Like, that my wife and I got married last year, and one of the things that we did was we wanted to make sure that we learned to choreograph first dance. I know nothing about dancing, never danced in my life, terrible at it. And it was one of those exercises where I felt dumb and stupid doing it. But I was determined to get through it and go through it. And even just that in isolation, it starts to build up just some habitual understanding of what it means to feel like you're not getting it. That you can then extrapolate out into all sorts of areas in your life.
Yes. So maybe take something less dramatic, less challenging.
Right.
Start challenging yourself now with smaller changes.
Right.
And acceptance. And when the big one comes, you can do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So that you when you're faced with that, there's not that initial like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Because you know how to pivot. You just teach yourself how to do it in really small ways. Like, I'm going to learn how to cook, or I'm going to learn how to play the piano, or I'm going to learn how to dance. And then you get that, how to learn how to learn. And so when something happens, you go, okay, this is a challenge, but you know what? I've learned how to do all of those things. I'm not just the master of one domain. I can get up and apply that learning to a whole raft of other things.
Right. You know what? Another thing is too, because I really think this is what it sort of is at the core of that, maybe shame, failure, you're feeling like you have to start over again. Quit thinking about what other people think of you.
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? That is at the core, I think, of it, because, and I'll speak for myself right now where I'm at. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things I have completed. You know what I mean? I own a business. I own a couple businesses now, and I have this show. I have a lot of things in my industry. I've moved up in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a pride thing. But if I lost all of it, I'm not any different of a person.
Right.
And no matter what anybody else would think of that, you know what I mean? I have not failed.
Yes, 100%.
I've succeeded.
Yeah.
I've succeeded. And I start right out from that place again.
Yeah.
I think this is, for a long time I didn't understand it, and there's still parts of it that I think maybe get misspoke, or maybe not failure is quite the best word to use in there. But accept the failure.
Right.
Accept the fact that maybe you fail every day.
Right.
And if you're not failing, and I know it sounded like gobbledygook for a long time to me too. But if you're not failing, you are not trying hard enough.
Exactly. You're not pushing the edges of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I think, we've been taught to believe that the arrow has to go to the right and up, basically in everything, right?
Yes.
But that's, to what end, right? When does that stop, right?
Yeah.
And so you either have this insatiable hunger for ongoing success, as you've deemed it, whether that's career success or money or companies that you've bought, and that is just a big pot a big black hole that you just keep throwing stuff into, and nobody really ever gets satisfied with that. And we undervalue character. I think character is hugely important. The legacy that you build. Sure, the businesses will be there, but it's who you are as a person, right? That is
your core. That is your core, and that's the only thing that people remember you for. They don't remember your friggin' business. They don't remember your show.
No.
They remember how they felt when they met you.
Yeah, they remember
and how you made them feel.
100%.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to, and the funny thing is, the more that you overvalue character, the more that you win in life and business anyway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, there are a couple of unfortunate souls that are the nicest people on earth and don't get anything, but for the most part, character always wins, right?
It does.
It
does. And I think too, because I have seen this in myself, there was a long time, and actually maybe this is something that I have to overcome daily, actually, but I bring myself up to 95% and step back.
Right.
I step back just a half an inch, but I'm not going in the right direction anymore, and I'm not stepping over that finishing line.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I think there's a part of me in a leadership role that just says, I don't want to accomplish that because it feels so good right here. Right? You know what I mean? It's just like, oh man, can I be the king for just a little while longer, before you step over and you're in new territory.
Right. And that happens a lot in folks that are in leadership positions. There's a inflated sense of value attributed to the individual success of the leader.
Yeah.
We have these old models of leadership that are essentially grounded in acts of heroism. And I don't know whether it's because we take it from movies or from sports or from the military, but all of those metaphors are all about somebody coming in to save the day.
Yeah.
Throwing the Hail Mary
it's the hero story, right? Yeah.
And so we kind of have planted that into the business world, and we tell people every day, be the hero. But the problem is, if you're a leader and you're being a hero, your people don't get any chance to learn or develop or grow or shine because you're stepping in all day, every day to solve all of their problems.
Solving the problems.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what I talk about in the book is to make the transition away from those acts of heroism, which ultimately, if you think about it, end up in stress and burnout for you as the leader because you're taking on more and more and more. Mm-hmm. It also builds a sense of learned helplessness in your people because they just begin to realize that if they've got a problem or a challenge, all they need to do is go to their boss and say, hey boss, what should I do? Or do you want to do this for me?
Yeah.
And they don't take any ownership or accountability for themselves.
Right.
And so you need to start to make the transition away from those acts of heroism towards really being more of the conductor of an orchestra that says, you know what, we're playing this bit of music together.
Yeah.
Like all I'm doing is helping you keep time.
Yes.
You're the freaking heroes here. Right?
I selected the piece.
Right.
Yeah, we're all going to play
We're all going to play it, yeah. Like, I'm not going to run, like, a conductor's not going to run and play the tuba if the guy misses a note or go bang the cymbal if he feels like they're behind, right? He's helping them draw out their skills and talents.
To draw that out, yes. Another thing, too, that I have been dealing with is there comes a time, and I think as businesses do, they take different cycles. So at different times, I felt this more intensely than I do at any given day. But any given day, you know what I mean? I hit a stress point with my business, with my role, with something like that feels like it's just climbing all over me.
Right.
It feels like it's encumbering me, and I react to it. I think one of the biggest lies we tell is do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I swear. I say, if you do what you love, you will do something you don't want to do every single day and maybe hourly to do what you love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, you've just got to look at relationships. I mean, I have no doubt that you love your wife deeply. I mean, I see you guys every day. Does that mean that it's all, rainbows and butterflies? Absolutely not.
Of course,
Yeah. I mean, that statement sounds really nice in theory.
It's a great little statement, right? Do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's the dreamer's job.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
But coming back to that is, I think we have this over-pronounced, I don't want to say desire, maybe expectation of feeling good.
Yeah.
We don't have to, you don't have to feel good all the time. You don't have to, there are going to be things that come at different levels with you. So talking about stress and talking about those things, how does the leader handle those things? How does him or her, of course, manifest that to the group?
Sure. I mean, just to back it up a little bit, I think the reason that we're there is I think that the media and a lot of let's call them motivational speakers, for lack of a better phrase.
Influencers, because there's a gazillion of them, especially on LinkedIn.
Sure, and they essentially say if you're not pursuing your passion, you're not living your best life, and that's nonsense, because a lot of the time people don't even know what their passion is necessarily, or that their passion is outside of the workplace, and that the job that they do there is a means to achieve that passion. Mm-hmm. And so one of my big thing is we have so many leaders and managers and organizations for whom, like, that's going to be their job and their career, and that's an awesome thing. Is it the most thing that they're passionate about? Maybe not. But how do we find a way in which they can enjoy more days than they don't? Doesn't mean that you're going to enjoy every single moment that you have, like you said. And there are a couple of things in there that you've got to look at. Number one, part of a leader's job is to a degree, to help foster a feeling of achievement and community in their team, and in doing that, helping them set some common goals that they can work towards, so that when times do get tough, we can at least point to a North Star and say, here's the difference that we're making, here's where we're going. I know that it's getting tough for you, it's tough for me, it's a hard day, we're getting pressure from whatever reason. But calling into that old Maslow's hierarchy of having something up, having a purpose bigger than themselves to point towards. We've taken that concept and said, your purpose bigger than you has to fall outside of traditional workplace, which isn't true. You can create a purpose that's bigger than yourself within the workplace that you have. So the more that you can call onto that and hold onto that, that makes those difficult days easier, because it pulls you towards something bigger and better in the long run.
You're looking at a bigger picture all the time. Yeah. No, that's great.
Also, the other thing that's great is just to do the grass is always greener exercise.
What's that one?
Well, because so you're like, well, we're having a cruddy day today. And then you go, okay, well, what's the alternative? I could be doing this for that company, or I could be doing this, and there's a whole set of other problems that come with that. Grass is always greener,
Right. Yeah. I think that is so true too. I tell you, and being older is a blessing in the sense that I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things in my life that looked a lot better than what I was doing at the given time.
Yeah.
I know now they are not.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just that simple. If you're a kid, if you're young, you see somebody, say like it's a movie star, gets a lot of attention, gets a lot of hero roles.
Right.
I mean, they're up on the screen, they're hanging with cool people, they get tons more opportunity than the normal person. You know what I mean? But when you really look at and learn and know more about life and see what an actor's life is really like, you probably would not want to trade places with them for, you know what I mean? Your perceived ideas of what they have.
Yeah, you need to pursue or fall in love with the job itself, not what it gets you, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Because the grind that comes with that, isn't necessarily going to add up to what you get from it.
You're not having your best day all the day, every day, all your life.
Sure.
What do you think the biggest misconceptions are about being a leader?
Number one, that you need to be sure about everything, that you need to know the answers. So I think that's one of the transitions that we're making, that there were these older models of leadership. There's this old adage that says leaders know the way, they go the way, and they show the way. And so there is that's the concept of the heroic leader. I know what we're doing, I know where we're going, I'm leading at the charge with my machete, chopping down the jungle to get through it. And that just doesn't fly anymore. We're making a massive shift towards leaders being more open, more vulnerable. And instead of saying, I know where we're going, they say, you know what? I actually don't know where we're going because there are too many variables in this. Here's my best guess. This is where I think would be a good place. What do you think? Would you like to go there? I think it's going to be an awesome journey. Do you want to come there with me? Awesome, let's go do it. And just having more of that sense of human connection that says, we're people doing this together. So that sense of surety, number one, I think is a massive misconception. The second thing that hurts a lot of people, particularly who are in functional roles, is a belief that a leadership career path is the only path to take. So, you take somebody that comes into a sales rep role and works that for a couple of years, and then they become, a senior sales rep, and then they get promoted to sales manager and then sales director, and all throughout each of those promotions, the job that they're doing takes them further and further away from the actual functional work that they were doing, that they were probably very good at.
It's sort of the Peter principle, right?
Oh, definitely, 100%. But being promoted into management and leadership is almost a completely different career track. And most people take those promotions because, again, everything goes up to the right. They feel like that's success, but they don't a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of coders don't want to be a project manager. They just want to
Right,
code.
they want to code,
And they're
yes,
really good at
yes,
it. And they
yes.
make the mistake of taking the role, and they realize I don't want to do that.
Right.
So being really clear on whether you want to move into those leadership positions or not can be.
That's
can be
really
helpful.
self-examination.
Right.
Yeah, you're knowing what you're really desiring
Right.
and what you're really good at.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you've got to try it, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
you go say, okay, well, I'll go down that path, and you go, it wasn't for me,
Yeah.
and then that's okay. Where I think a lot of people get stuck is this belief of like, well, I don't really like it and I don't want to do it, but it's the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it anyway, which is the worst reason to make a choice on anything.
Yeah. Right now out there, well, there's a couple things I want to ask. Let me think about this, because I was going to ask you who you think the best leaders are, but maybe we'll save that for a minute. Who do you think the best, besides yourself, of course, who do you think, because here's what I'm thinking about. I see right now there is, an overabundance of thought leadership coaches on LinkedIn, other platforms and stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, there's Gary Vee. Gary Vee has, to me, he is so right on with most. He says, I don't agree with every single thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But he is so right on generally in his concepts of what to do, and I think it's being nice to people, it's treating people with respect, because I just think we don't hear that enough. Number one.
Although to be honest,
ahead.
I actually think that he's made that transition over the last year or so, and he's going full force on it in 2020. I reckon about 4 or 5 years ago, whenever he started all of this, he was a lot more ruthless and cutthroat than he was he is now. I think he's learned in his own leadership, and forgive me, Gary, for saying this without actually speaking to you once, but I get the sense just in seeing the evolution of his content that he's moved from execution at all costs towards actually a lot of stuff that we're talking about here, which is execution doesn't mean anything if you're not bringing people with you, if you're not treating them with the appropriate
Well, maybe
respect.
he's learned that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because in a situation like his, I would imagine, I'm not here to talk about Gary Vee, but in that situation, it's, look how the pot has risen in temperature for him.
Yeah.
He is front and center right now.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the general, and once again, misconceptions of what we're hearing from the abundance of thought leaders out there? What do you think is some of the biggest misconceptions there are?
You know what, I don't know whether it's necessarily misconceptions. I think it's more about it's easy to tag a thought leadership label on something. What does it even...
Like an influencer.
What does it even frickin' mean, right? and
Thank you, Dave.
So, unless somebody has a business where they're truly working with clients to make this stuff happen, whatever it is, whether it's marketing, whether it's social media, whether it's leadership, whether it's consulting, whether it's coaching, like if you're wanting to explore somebody further, or you're getting influenced by their thoughts, just take a look and see what their business model is. Do they really spend time doing this? Because the barriers to entry to just put up a blog post or a video and call yourself an influencer is nothing. So I that would be my biggest thing. I don't know. I've got a lot of thoughts on whether or not that's going to stick around for a while. We were sort of promised when the internet came out that the cream of the crop would rise to the top, right? We're in this position of like there's peer-to-peer filtering, and we're going to see the folks rise to the top, and that hasn't quite shook out the way that it has. There's like the top people, and then there's this sort of just level of everybody else.
Mass of that in the I want to be that category.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And so my message actually was more for the influencers. Like, if you want a career being an influencer in whatever category, or thought leader in whatever category it is that you're doing, just live the life of actually the thing that you're helping your clients with. The amount of social media experts out there, you go and you check their Facebook page, they've got 45 followers, right? And it's like, how are you going to teach somebody? You're going to teach somebody the principles, sure, but you haven't been able to do that yourself. I'm not claiming to be good at social media at all. I would never do that. But in whatever industry it is that you're working on, like, what experience do you actually have in putting that into practice?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. You know what I mean? And once again, I think that comes back to leadership.
Right.
And for me, in my case, because this is the way I look at it, here's the one thing that I like is the amount of information that's just coming at me.
Sure.
Number one, that is a good thing for me, because I'm just like a little crab filter feeder, right? You know what I mean? I'm going through. Some I'll take for a while. I go, no, wait a minute. Maybe that wasn't quite right. You know, in doing in the correct way. But I like the mass of information I'm getting. That's a good thing. But the one thing, you hit the nail on the head, you say, oh yeah, here's how to do this, do LinkedIn, and they've got 45 followers. You know what I mean? Which means nothing. If they're the right 45 followers,
well,
I say that is awesome.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And maybe their plan is I'll get you the right 45 followers in 30 days. Awesome. Like
that's good. But it's so much of it is just like down to numbers and like this is what you're going to do. Right. And it's all coming back to about your success.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think if an influencer is out there, and I put myself in this category, I'm influencing what I know, what I've already lived.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm bringing influence to that community based on my experience.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And wanting that exchange to see if I'm right, wanting that exchange to see if there's a better idea out there.
And that's why I'm so impressed by what you do, is because you truly are the influencer in that industry. You know, you're not saying I'm going to teach you how to be an influencer. You're teaching
I'm going to teach you the 5 quick steps to being Burnie. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, I hope that we start to see more and more of that on industry-specific areas, and maybe we do. Maybe I don't spend enough in certain channels, but you know, could you imagine if there was somebody doing what you're doing as it relates to, you know, cooking at scale in a restaurant, or you know?
Dave, I tell you, the one guy, Roger Wakefield, who is my hero, he plumber, in Dallas. I don't know if you've ever seen him on there or not, but. Amazing guy, and he's talking about social media. He is talking about putting your industry out there. But there's a guy who owns a plumbing company. He's talking plumbing. He's telling you how to not only fix the toilet, he's talking to other plumbers about best practices. And all of that. That guy, because you know, whenever I talk to somebody about being in your industry, about talking to other people, I always just picked out the plumber as the least likely person who would ever do it, and he did it. You know, so that is something I do, and I think that is a sort of a good barometer in looking at people engaging where they are.
I think it also goes back to the point earlier about, you know, needing to learn something new. There's so much information out there that if you need to pick up a new hobby or a skill, like it's right there and it's free. Like you could just educate yourself. You could become a plumber. You could become a grip and lighting guy just by learning through what you see. You know?
Yes. You know, we got 40 minutes left, or 20 minutes left. We're down 20. I want to just go a few things I highlighted here.
Sure.
Things that just sparked my interest in. Achieving more with fewer resources. What comes to mind?
I just think in almost any industry or role, we're being pressured to do more with less. You know, particularly if you look in a lot of corporations where budgets get slashed and we're being asked to do more with less money, less people, less tangible resources. How do we basically make that stretch, I think is going to be hugely important.
And is there a time when you're doing, because this is classically in our industry, is there a time where you just look at the person who wants you to do it and you shake your head and go, no?
I think that's fair. I think one of the things that we need to do is be more human with each other, particularly in that when there's a hierarchical relationship, a leader will come to somebody and say, I need you to do this, and they go, okay, knowing in the back of their head, I've got 10 other things to do and I can't do this, or I'm going to be up all night to make it happen. Just being able to say, hey, sure, I'd love to do that for you. Like, here's my to-do list. Like, what things would you like me to slide or change or move on?
What do we take out of the list so I can accomplish for this for you tonight?
Let's have some sort of a negotiation or an agreement. And you know, as a leader, one of the best things that you can do when you're going to your team, that if you know that they're pressured or stressed, is to say, hey, I've got something here that I'd love for you to do. Can we take a look at what's on your plate at the minute, just to see whether this is possible or not? And actually make them co-conspirators in that transaction. Too many leaders just say, hey, do this for me, and they just throw it over the transom, and then people underneath them are just scrambling like crazy to pick it up. So just do a better job at really like conducting a joint diagnosis or a joint triage into what is going to happen to my workload if we put this into the middle.
Yeah,
we have a tendency across it just as individuals to say yes and figure out how to deliver it later, whereas and that can lead to stress and burnout. Sometimes when you just need to say.
And I think that is the most thing, and that's actually what's almost expected now.
Right,
And
yeah.
one thing I have turned around and just said, no,
Yeah.
I don't care about the money involved. I don't care about what it is. I'm not doing that, and I'm not putting 2 guys in there to do that.
Right.
You know, you need 4.
And I think people are scared that if they say no, that the work or the project or the business or the money or whatever it is will go away.
Yeah.
And the reality is that
Yeah.
in 90% of the time, it won't.
Yeah.
And in those 10% of the time, whenever it does, you're probably better off without it.
Oh, so much better off. So much. And then you're leaving room for the ones that do
Right.
work.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Overemphasis on visionary leader.
Yeah. So again, it's one of the models of leadership that are pervasive in our environment. You know, you look at what the media and entertainment puts as a bastion of leadership success. So that you think about people like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. You think about people like Oprah Winfrey, Nelson Mandela, all very visionary leaders.
Yeah.
You know, reimagining entire industries.
Yes.
And when that's your tentpole of what a good leader looks like, the reality is that most of those folks were born with a visionary proclivity. That's their natural way of viewing the world.
Right.
Not everybody's born that way.
Right.
And so when we say you have to be a visionary leader, there are the majority of other leaders out there that just aren't overly visionary, but they can be great leaders anyway.
Yes.
And so here are the ways in which we can help you get there. The other thing that it does is, and we've seen it in the last year or so, very much with a magnifying glass on it, is, you know, this notion of the visionary leader who just walks around with their own reality distortion field, says if they say we can do this long enough, it'll happen,
Yeah.
and their people will make it happen. What that does is it distorts ethics and moral boundaries. So I'm sure you remember the story of Fire Festival.
Sure.
The guy, you know,
Yeah.
he thought he was a truly visionary leader. He said,
Yeah.
he basically thought, if I say enough times that this is going to happen,
It
it's
will.
going to happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's
Yeah.
ended up in court. And another good example is Theranos with Elizabeth Holmes,
Yes,
the
yes,
medical
classic.
testing kit. You know, again, she said, here's a concept for a visionary leader. I am a visionary leader. If I just say yes enough, it's going to happen. And it pushes against the boundaries of morals and ethics.
Yeah.
So there's room for leaders that are not overly visionary, and that's where I think we need to move to.
You know, the amazing thing about those 2 examples, look how far they drove the car down the
I
freeway.
know, I know.
You know, that is the amazing thing to me.
It is.
And you know what? All of the business reporting, you know, for that woman that you spoke about,
Yeah.
and all of that. I mean, she was getting big press.
Oh,
Fire
huge.
Festival got huge press.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is something, I think this is where the individual comes back to deciding what their own values
Yes,
are.
100%.
You know what I mean? Because if your values are getting notoriety,
Yeah.
if your values are being the person that everybody's talking about,
Right.
you better go back and re-examine
100%.
because that isn't worth anything.
Yeah, definitely.
You know.
And don't get me wrong, we need visionaries like those folks. Absolutely,
Of course,
they're great.
of
But
course.
they are, you know, they're the 0.00001% of success stories, right?
Right,
Not
right,
everybody's going to
right,
be Mark Zuckerberg,
right, yeah.
right? You know,
Not every physicist is Einstein.
Right, yeah, 100%. So for all of everybody else that's in a leadership position that isn't going to be that way, what's the model? Because there's no other model to follow.
Yes, that's a very, very, very good point. I like that. I like that. Cycle of mediocrity, and I've got a few things. One is urgency and heroic leadership. You go through a cycle here, and I think of bad practices. Just run us through that.
Sure.
Real
So
quick.
essentially, we've touched on it a couple of times that because we're so overwhelmed in the day-to-day, we treat everything as urgent. So every interruption that we have, we feel like we need to attend to right away. And we have no time to focus on the important, which is, as a leader, actually is where you bring most value. When you can think about the longer term direction of your team, you're adding more value than being stuck in the day-to-day weeds. And so when we value everything, when we see everything as urgent and we value speed and efficiency, as a leader, when something comes in, usually the response is, you know what, I can just do this. I'll just do it. I'll just make it happen.
Yeah.
And so we lead through these acts of heroism. So when something goes wrong, we step in to save the day. When we're about to lose our biggest client, we step in to get them back. Whenever one of our team screws up, instead of getting them to go fix it, we fix it for them.
Yeah.
So we're operating, leading through these acts of heroism. What that does in the long run is it adds more to your workload, so you become stressed and you become burnt out. What it also does is, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is builds that learned helplessness in your people. So they begin to realize you're just going to essentially either tell me
You're
what
just
to
gonna
do
bail them out.
or fix
Yeah.
it for me.
Yeah.
And so we just drain empowerment from them. And it's in subtle ways. It doesn't even have to be big, broad, sweeping ways. Just little things like, leave that there, I'll deal with it, or I'll talk to them,
Yeah.
or hey, why don't you do that instead?
Yeah.
Just taking the choice out of their hand is slowly draining empowerment for them.
Right.
You've got to flip the switch so that instead of doing that, you're actually building empowerment in your people. You're letting them solve their problems. You're pushing them to come up with creative solutions rather than fixing it for them all the time.
And that's delegation. That's delegating that back to them,
Yes.
if you will.
That's a part
you
of
know
it,
what I
yeah.
mean? And that allows the leader to have the freedom to lead.
100%.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you looked on, one of the first things I do whenever I'm working with leaders is say, pull out your to-do list. You look through it and you say, okay, if you could just ask yourself honestly, if I could give that to somebody on my team, and even if they needed a little bit of help or a little bit of advice or a little bit of guidance or a little bit of time, could they feasibly do that? Then the answer is you should delegate that out.
Yeah.
Too many leaders go, oh, well, that'll take me too long to tell them how to do that, or I'll have to fix that one anyway.
Oh boy,
or
that's
they'll-
me. That's me.
Right.
I mean, truly, that's
Right.
me. You know, and I think I've gotten a little better, haven't I, Tony? Yeah. All right. Good. Thank you. But that is so true.
Right.
That is so true. And I'm going through it right now in my business. I'm making a transition in my rental business, bringing on a new partner and stuff. And what I'm very happy about that is I know I got the right guy, which is the first
absolutely.
choice. You know, that's the first right decision you have to do is to get the
100%.
right person. But is I have the freedom now, and I think and leadership has been a real struggle for me. I'll be honest with you, is that giving him that room
Yeah.
to move
Yeah.
and realizing when I want to say something or think I should say something, which is more like it.
Right.
I realize, no,
Yeah.
they don't let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go. There's not going to be any learning with me sticking my nose in again.
100%. And you know, you bring your experience and what you've seen work well in the past and where you've seen things fail. And, you know, at times that's valuable, but nobody's going to learn, like you said, if you say don't do that. Right?
Yeah.
You're going to learn if you hit the hot plate and it's hot.
Yeah,
Right.
you're going to burn your hand.
Right.
Yeah. I just highlighted a piece here. No amount of training or coaching will enable your evolution unless until you're willing to engage in the introspection required and hard work needed to navigate the journey.
Right. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You
Yeah.
know, it's the same. You know, making the transition here is no different than making the transition to a new industry or a new job or a new role or any of that. It's not going to happen unless it starts from within you, with you waking up every day and saying, yes, I want to be better in this
Yes.
way. You can sit and we sort of have this belief that we'll become better leaders through osmosis, that if I just read a book or go to a workshop, I'll just emerge as a better
As a
leader.
better leader, yeah.
Right, and that's nonsense. You've got to practice it. So you've
Yeah.
got to start from this position of, I want to put into practice some of the things that I'm learning here.
Yeah, you can show them the path,
Right.
but they have to walk it.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Number two, I think this is about improving yourself as a leader.
Right.
Demonstrate vulnerability. So give me a little bit of thought on that.
So it goes back to, I think what we talked a little bit about before. It's that sense where you don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to be sure about everything. That it's okay to say, you know what, here are my fears. Here's what I'm scared of. Here's what I'm excited about. Here's what I think about the direction that we're going in. What are your thoughts? What are you scared about? What are you feared about? Like, how can we approach this together collectively for success? You know?
Yeah.
And just be yourself. I mean, there's just something that frustrates me a lot whenever I see groups interact together, and it doesn't have to be just like the most bureaucratic corporation. It happens in organizations of any size, where you come into a room, you do the small talk, you get to know, where you're the person, the real person that you walk into the room, and then all of a sudden the meeting starts and it's all right, okay, it's time to get serious.
It's a different thing. Yeah, different vibe.
You're acting different. Like I was out with you. We went to the pub last night. We had a beer, and now you're you know. I think we need more openness, and by that I don't mean unprofessionalism.
Yeah.
I want people to be 100% authentically them, and professional at the same time.
Right.
Sometimes with just a tendency to do that, like this is
Yeah, this is the swath. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So vulnerability, I think, helps with that.
Yeah.
Like, who are you?
Yeah,
what,
right.
What makes you tick? What doesn't? What are you scared of? What gets you up in the morning?
Yeah,
All
the
that
whole
stuff's
thing.
important.
Yeah. No. I like that. These are the external behaviors of the self-evolved leaders. They set common goals. Yeah.
Hugely important, whether you're in whether you're in a team that's going to be around for 5 years, or whether you're in a team like your industry.
For 2 days.
Yeah, for 2 days, just setting those common goals and getting complete alignment around them.
Yeah.
And one of the things that often happens is we think that we have these agreed common goals, but we have slightly different nuanced understanding of what it is. And the problem with that is it's kind of a lot like a golf swing. If you hit a golf ball a millimeter away from where you're supposed to hit it, the ball doesn't end up a millimeter away from where you want it to go.
Yeah.
It probably ends up in the green or in the rough or the bunker or the water, or in my case, like 2 holes over. And so when you start from a position where there's not absolute clarity on your shared goals, you run the risk of hitting the golf ball and just being a little millimeter off, and the knock-on effect is that it's 2 or 3 fairways over.
Yeah. Gotcha. Let me read these off. They help their team achieve these goals.
Yep.
Right? They focus on development of their people.
Yep.
They focus on long-term direction of the team.
Right.
They move from pull to push. Tell me about that.
So essentially, that last characteristic is, instead of me pulling the rock up a hill on my own,
Right.
I actually get with my team behind the rock, and we push it up collectively together.
Gotcha.
So all of those characteristics are essentially embedded through that whole notion of moving away from acts of heroism towards actually making the team succeed collectively and grow and develop. And it kind of all comes together in a mantra, the self-evolved leaders mantra, which is, my focus is to help my team set and achieve their common goals, and in doing so help them become the best version of themselves. Because that mantra, it strips away any notion of acts of heroism, because it's not about if I succeed or if you succeed. If I succeed and you succeed and Tony doesn't, then we've failed. Right? We've got to ensure that collectively together that we're all achieving those common goals that we set.
Yeah. Keep up your end, Tony. We don't want to fail over here. How does somebody get this book, and how does somebody get to know Dave?
Sure, absolutely. So the book officially goes on launch January 28th, but it's available for pre-order on Amazon right now. If you want more information about the book, go to selfevolvedleader.com, and there's a link to me and what I do there as well.
And do you have a set schedule for keynoting or seminars or your work, or somebody just gets a hold of you?
Yeah,
for
if you're
those
interested
things?
in having me either do a keynote or come and work with your team, there's some contact us information on the website. Just shoot us a note and I will get back to you as soon as I can.
All right.
Back to what we were saying earlier, most of my business is working with teams, right?
Right.
So this is not just me and my thoughts on leadership. This is built off of
this
15,
is your working
15 years of working with teams.
Yes, and being involved with that and stuff. And I will tell you, in our industry, there's a lot of businesses that are in transition right now, and I'm thinking of manufacturers, I'm thinking of people who are intersecting, and the clientele is changing.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is the guy you want to go to if you want to start working in a new way, or the ways you have been working are not working as well as they have before you. And I can vouch for that because I know both sides.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you, sir.
Dave.
It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. And we will see you guys next week on Burnie's Applebox.
Thanks a lot.
Cut. That's a wrap.